Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. So we're going to do another episode of Shop Talk here. Lately I've been getting a lot of requests for some pretty basic introductions into different tooling around the shop. One of them is going to be reamers. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is reamers. And I've also had guys ask me to explain taps, the different types of taps, and there's some other cutters too that people's asked me to talk about. So this is going to be sort of beginner type stuff for you advanced guys. I know this is all going to be kind of common sense to you, but there's a lot of guys out there that watch this channel that are learning. They're learning about machine shop work, and they're learning what tools are what. They've never had anybody guide them through there and teach them what is what. So I'm trying to help you guys out and share a little bit about what I know about the shop, and I'll let you know what I know. So what I decided to do, we're going to go ahead and talk about reamers today. So I've pulled out a selection of reamers. I've got several different types here on the bench, and I'm going to explain about each one of those. That's sort of what the request was, is if I could explain the difference between the reamers, because some guys don't know what type of reamer is what whenever they're mentioned on video or we're showing them being used in a video. So before I get into that, I'll kind of show you my reamer collection around here. Now, most of my reamers started from, the shop during my granddad and my dad's days, because most everything that they had was passed down to me. So they had a very good assortment of reamers, and something that I've actually learned, and like with working for another company that basically started from the ground up, is that to have a successful shop, I won't say successful, if you want to have a well-rounded shop, you've got to have a lot of tools. And I know that tools cost money. It's very expensive to tool up, and that's where the surplus sales and auctions and eBay and all that kind of stuff is great for guys that are trying to tool up, that don't have a capital budget or a tooling budget to afford new. So a lot of the reamers and the cutting tools, a lot of the tools that was acquired for our shop was bought by my granddad back whenever the Navy base used to have surplus sales out there. That's where he got machines, that's where he got tools, cutters, all kind of stuff. Now they don't do that out there anymore, not that I know of. I know you have government options that you can go on the websites and things like that. I don't do that, but granddad bought a lot of the stuff at the surplus sales and brought it home, and that was back when tools were tools, man. Everything he got was mainly all USA made stuff and just good stuff. So there is some cutters and tools that my dad bought several times throughout the years. So some of it is sort of newer stuff, but a lot of it's old stock, but all really good tooling. So let's go ahead and take a walk over here. I'm gonna take you over here to Dad's toolbox, and I think I've showed this drawer before. I can't remember. So this upper drawer right here is where all of the, I'd say, smaller reamers are at, and it's a pretty mixed variety. You have taper shank drills, you have chucking reamers, and you have adjustable reamers, but this is where all the small ones. So if I'm looking for a reamer, this is usually where I go to. I know this is not organized. You don't have to tell me. This is just how this drawer has been as long as I've been a machinist. Dad had, this is where he would, the Victor lathe used to basically sit just right over here in front of this toolbox. So Dad got to where he was putting his bronze bushing stock over here, small bronze bushing stock. You can see there's a lot of it in there, and this is just how he worked. So all his reamers went right here, and yeah, you got to dig through and you got to bring some calipers over here and measure when you're looking for one, but that's just how it's been. If I was to take all these out and put them in an organized bin over there on the wall somewhere, it would kind of, I don't know, it would take away from the toolbox. What would I do with that drawer? This is how I've always known it, and I'm just having a hard time making it different from what I'm used to, although I do love organization. But anyway, this is what's in this drawer, is all of the smaller reamers, and there's even these adjustable reamers that we're going to talk about. All right, so I just thought I'd show you that, and I don't know if I can get it open. We'll see. This is a two-handed toolbox right here. Down in this drawer right here is where our tapered reamers are. We also keep our counterbore tools here. That's something that we'll talk about another time. This is a set of counterbores that Dad had bought whenever I was working for him. some of the best counterboring tools I've ever used and had. That's back when Greenfield was still making tools. But anyway, we got tapered reamers down here. See, there's a big tapered reamer. This should be a Morse taper reamer right here. That's the number 4. So number 4 Morse taper. You probably all have heard of Morse taper by now. We'll talk about that. And then these are pin reamers down here. This is where tapered pins are at. If I was looking for a tapered pin, I'd probably come over here and look for a reamer right here. I've got some bags in here that have tapered pins in them. And then these are some more Morse taper reamers. These are some that were given to me by a viewer. All right, so there's some of the reamers right there. And then down here in these lower boxes, this is some of the bigger stuff. There's some hand reamers and some adjustable reamers in there. And this is probably the biggest one I got. I think Jack Hoyne gave me this. That is a shell reamer. This is another box full of shell reamers and the arbors that hold them, and some of the small ones right there. That's a box full of hand reamers, and then there is this one. This is another one Jack had given me. It's a big blade reamer. We're going to talk about those. And then that box is full of taper shank reamers. All right. So I'm going to use the Steadicam and sit here and pull these out in front of you and talk about each one, okay? So this subject matter was kind of prompted in my last couple S&S videos whenever I was showing some hand reaming over there. I had an 1.5-inch reamer that I was cleaning out a hole, and so it sparked some interest from some guys, and that's kind of how this one come about. I wanted to go ahead and get this video made while it was fresh on my mind and pull out these reamers and talk about some different ones. So we're going to start with these. All right, this one right here, that is a chucking reamer. Whenever you hear a chucking reamer, or you're looking for one that you want to hold in a collet, sometimes, you know, the smaller ones you can hold in a drill chuck. That works fine too. It is a straight shank. There is no taper shank down on the end. So that right there is a chucking reamer. This right here, you see it's got a square on the end of it. That is a hand reamer. You see that one don't have a square on it. So that's, if you're looking at two and if you see one that's a straight shank, that's a chucking reamer. This is a hand reamer if it's got a square on there. This one's typically used to hand ream something. You put a tap wrench on the end of that and you turn it to clean up a hole. This is another chucking reamer right here, and this is, I pulled this one out because I was going to show the difference between the two, besides the diameter change there. But can you see what the difference is? So this is a straight flute, this is a spiral flute, and I had another question about what's the difference between the two. So a straight flute is more of your general purpose hand reaming. You know, most of your reamers will have that, but you also see a lot with a spiral flute. Now, there's a couple benefits to a spiral fluted reamer. One benefit is if you're going through a hole that has a slot in it, like a keyway, or maybe even a hole, you know, a big hole or something like that, a spiral flute, the way it's positioned, helps bridge that gap, and you won't have that knocking with that this would actually provide. You know, if you're trying to use a straight flute with something with a keyway, it's not going to want to cut because it's trying to jump into that groove. So you need a spiral flute for jobs like that, so that it kind of spirals across that groove and connects it to both sides of it. So that's a spiral flute there. It also provides, whenever it's a this is a right hand helix, right hand being like that. You see my thumb in my hand in the helix. That's how you tell the helix. If you have a left hand helix spiral flute, that is an excellent finishing reamer. They do a better job of creating a really nice finish and on size. Although I will say, just from my personal experience, I've never really had a lot of good luck with reamers. If you're looking, whenever I'm trying to make like a very precision size, I usually don't rely on a reamer. If I got a few thousandths to play, then I'll use a reamer. But It's also important that it's chucked very, very true, like in a collet, if you're going to use a reamer to create a precision size. Because I have blown some jobs relying on a reamer and ended up cutting like that, and it cut it too big. If you're trying to, like, you know, have a nice little tap-in fit for a dowel pin or something like that, it's messed me up before, I'll tell you that. All right, so I had mentioned this one here, that being a hand reamer. This is the same thing. This is just a bigger version. That box down there, I've got hand reamers. I forget how big they go. The ones that come from my shop, I know I got them like up to 2-inch. So that's a hand reamer, and these typically have, it's really hard to see in video, but you have a very, very light angle that's ground on that end that helps it start down in a hole. And if you've got a hole that, say, I'm going to say maybe 5/10 thousandths, that's about all you're going to want to try to hand ream out of something. If you're trying to cut something that's more egg-shaped than that or smaller, you're going to have a difficult time. These are really just designed, I believe it was either 10 or 15% was the ratio. I was taught, like, if you're going to ream a hole, drill it 1/64th smaller than the size of the reamer. But again, that depends on the size of the reamer. That won't apply if you're using a really small diameter reamer. That's going to be too much metal. So if you're going to rely on that formula, I'd say if you're reaming some smaller holes, maybe try the 10% rule. Just take 10% of whatever the diameter is, drill it undersize that, and then ream it. So that is a hand reamer. We're going to talk about the proper ways to turn these things too. Don't go over there and grab an adjustable crescent wrench and put on there. I was going through my video there, and I totally realized that I completely jumped over the taper shank reamer. So I went ahead and pulled this one back out and was going to mention this. This is another style reamer that we were going to mention. So this is a taper shank. The shank where you hold and drive the reamer is a taper, and this is a Morse taper. This one being a number 3 Morse taper. This is a 1.1/8" reamer. I actually sent this one out to California to Tom Lipton's shop, and he used it in one of those jobs on his etching press. I believe it was last year. He used it, but this is one of the ones that Dad had bought. Still got the original yellow case that it stays in. So that's the only difference between a chucking reamer and a taper shank, is that your chucking reamer is going to have a straight shank all the way down to the end so that you can hold it in a collet, and a taper shank is made to go in a Morse taper quill, like a tailstock or a quill of a drill press, or you can even use these in the milling machines if you have the proper Morse taper holder for that to go in. So another style that you have, and this is kind of like the one that you see me used in that S&S. This is a very small version of that reamer that you see me use, that 1.5". These are adjustable, but these are adjustable, and I believe they're adjustable for regrind purposes, not necessarily to make this bigger. These have a taper inside there with this adjuster, and you can screw that in, and what I believe that's for, I've never actually had to have this done before, but that's what I remember being told. If this thing, say it's dull, needs to be reground, you can turn this in, and that spreads those flutes out a little bit, and then you can regrind it back to size. So that's that style right there. All right, and then you have adjustable blade reamers. There's a couple right here, and these blades that are in here are on a taper, and then you have some slots that's cut in there. You can see them on the end. Those are also on a taper, and they follow that taper. So the cutting edge of the blades are parallel with the shank of the tool, and these are always within a range. So this one here is 15/16 to 1.1/16. And you have all that adjustment right there. And it's pretty simple. You just, if you're needing to adjust it bigger, you're going to be pushing the blades that way towards the shank end. So you would loosen this nut here and tighten that nut. Basically just slide the blades either direction, and you would take a micrometer and mic it across there very, very gingerly to get your size. All right, so that is an adjustable blade reamer. You also have reamers that look like this. These are also adjustable, and I've got a whole box over there. This is made by Limpco, and it's adjustable in the same way. This one's actually broke right there, but you have the upper and bottom nuts, and it's the same way. This thing slides along that taper, so you can adjust it to the size that you need. Or in this case right here, these guys right here, that's like a little bushing, a little guide that you can hold on there with your hand and spin it up on the top. But these kind of reamers here are excellent if you've got two holes that are in line, some kind of bracket, you know, that's maybe line board, and you got bushings. Maybe you're having to install new bushings in there, and the pin won't quite go all the way through because maybe one bushing's cocked one way or the other, or maybe one bushing's slightly smaller, something like that. You can stick a reamer like this through there to one side, and then you could put your handle up on there, and it's supposed to shoulder out on the diameter that you're trying to ream, and you can turn it, and you can pull it out, you can flip it through the other way, stick that back on there like that, and keep reaming it out until you get your holes reamed in line. So that's what a reamer like that is used for. All right, we talked about shell reamers when I was showing you the box right here. This is a shell reamer, and the arbor, this is a Morse taper shank number 4. These come in different sizes. There's a whole range of sizes depending on the size shell that goes on there, and I've got several of these. That one's actually carbide tipped if you look close enough, and forget what the size of this one is. This is 1.9375 or 1 15/16. This is another one right there just to kind of show you. It's actually there's a tapered arbor on this end right here that this fits on, and then you got the 2 keyways that drive it, much like a shell mill. And they make these in all different sizes. All right, and then the last style that we're going to talk about is our tapered reamers. This is a number 5 Morse taper reamer. I haven't used these very much other than just cleaning up a Morse taper. I don't know if they're if they can be used to actually cut a taper if you're trying to like build, say, a quill for a tailstock or something like that. I don't know if I'd trust it for that, but I do know that you can put this in there and you can turn it and clean out if you've got some burrs inside. You know, if something's spun in there and it's created some burrs, you can use a Morse taper reamer for such. Okay, and the last one, these are also tapered reamers, but these are pin sizes. You have a standard pin size for tapered pins, and each one is a number. So here's a small one right there, and I may not be able to see. Yeah, that's a number 3. So a reamer for a number 3 tapered pin. This one right here, it's done rubbed off. I don't know what size that one is. And this one I think is a number 9. No, I'm sorry, it's a number 10. So for a number 10 tapered pin. All right, so that's the difference between the different reamers, and I hope that made sense and you gained a little bit from that. I wanted to mention the proper way to turn a reamer, and that is by using a tap wrench like this, a straight tap wrench. And that's why it's important to have a wide range of sizes. See, that one's too small right there, so I'll go with this card number. That's a card number 9, and that would hold that right there. That's the other thing that these tap wrenches are made for, is for taps and reamers. So whenever you turn a reamer, you need to have equal pressure on that as you're turning it. Don't put a wrench on it and pull off to the side. It's going to dig in. You're going to dig in there. It's not a cut. It won't cut a straight hole. So always use a straight handle. If you do not have a proper tap wrench to turn a square drive like this, say you're trying to drive this reamer right here. Say you don't have a big enough tap wrench. Here's another big one that I got, and see, that one doesn't fit. And that's where I would go to my Greenfield number 22 and put on there. You can take an end wrench if you have 2 end wrenches that fit on this, and you can put one, stack them on top of each other like that, and that'll give you 2 wrenches to be able to turn that sucker with. Also, I've seen those old style monkey wrenches, kind of like a pipe wrench, but they're straight. If you have 2 of those, you can stick one over there 180 out, and that'll give you a couple handles to turn it with. So a couple tips there for turning those things. Oh, and one other thing that I was going to mention, and I meant to put this in another video. Whenever you're using a reamer, don't ever turn it backwards. And I'm not saying that to say you're gonna, the world's gonna end, but if you spin a reamer backwards, it's very common to see guys, they're reaming a hole, they're spinning that, and all of a sudden it gets stuck and they can't get it to move, or they can't pull it back out of the hole. Well, they want to start going in reverse like it's a screw. And yeah, it kind of eases up, but what you're doing is you're rolling that cutting edge over, and you're creating a burr on that cutting edge, and it dulls the cutting edge. So that's why you never run a reamer backwards. You can look in all the machine literature out there, machinery's handbooks and things like that, and they'll tell you the same thing. Don't turn them backwards. So if you get one stuck, don't turn it backwards trying to get it out. You need to find another way to get it out of there. If you need to come through with a drift and kind of tap on it, and or put some A-bomb torque on it and pull that sucker out of there. Just keep turning it right, the right-hand direction there. So, all right, that's going to be it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something from it. I will get to some more content here soon. We'll talk about taps next probably. And yeah, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you later.